You're listening to The American Entrepreneur, your number one source for Marcellus Shale coverage.
I think that right now it's obvious that there's a huge problem with unconventional gas development, both in terms of water contamination, air pollution, health problems. I've been asking these guys to sit in a room with me for a long time since I started to make the film, and they have not granted me an interview. And I think there's a very active sense of either we know there's a problem and we don't want to talk about it, or we're in denial that there's a problem, so let's Chris Tucker talk about it. I think that the problem is that none of these companies want to accept responsibility. They don't want to act in a way that's accountable. And this is the same thing that they do to families. It's not just to people in the media like myself, but also families that are complaining. They'll make them jump through hoops and talk to spokesmen and talk to people who are out there basically being paid to show for the gas companies rather than actually come forward and say, this is our company, what's your grievance, what are we doing wrong, can we listen to you? It goes through a PR firm or some kind of an attack machine, and that's what Chris Tucker really represents.
I'd say that Josh has some trouble finding individual gas company folks to sit down with because our guys actually work for a living. We have to actually do stuff during the day that's actually productive in creating natural gas and generating that and delivering it. I think you find out that you look through this thing and you find what our guys are doing. Our guys are participating in community meetings. They're actively interfacing with DEP and other regulators, submitting information to federal regulators when asked. I mean, our guys are more than happy to sit down with legitimate folks who have legitimate concerns and work through them. But Josh is a bit of a huckster, and we're going to find out here over the next couple minutes. How his assertions square with the reality situation.
Is Gasland intended by you to be something interesting that highlights some problems, or do you think that in a comprehensive way it states the overall impact of oil and gas drilling and fracturing in particular?
Absolutely, it is as comprehensive a survey as we could do. I traveled to 25 different states. There are about 10 different states featured in the film. And I've actually put out a call to the oil and gas industry, and I've been doing this since April, very actively in the media, saying if you have a town where you've drilled more than 100 wells and you don't have water contamination and you don't have air pollution and health problems, take me to that town. Everywhere this industry goes, you have the same problems. I spent all of last week in the Barnett Shale, traveling around the Fort Worth areas, and the conditions that people are living in are absolutely horrific. The air pollution is so intense that you feel nauseous.
Right. So, Josh,
after a while.
Josh, let's back up here a second. Is it your view that these air emissions and water emissions result from fracturing or from improper cementing of surface casing?
There is no difference between fracturing and improper surface casing. Hydraulic fracturing is the entire process. There is something definitely going wrong with what's going on underground, but what we do know is above ground, when you're doing hydraulic fracturing, you're venting off an enormous amount of volatile organics directly into the air off of those well sites. You can't see them with the naked eye. You can see them with a FLIR camera, and we went around the Barnett Shale all week with a FLIR camera observing site after site after site, which were emitting toxic poisons 100 feet from people's bedroom window, 300 feet from people's bedroom windows. This is not an activity that people can live near,
so Josh,
period. It is inherently contaminating, and it is very destructive to health.
Josh, just to ask the question. So are you saying that there are vertical fractures that run for 9,000 feet?
I'm not saying that. Nobody knows the answer to that. If the process has actually been investigated by the EPA, by a regulatory body, we might know the answer. The process has never been investigated. The problem is that every time hydraulic fracturing was being asked to investigate it by the EPA under their imminent and substantial endangerment authority, it was shut down by the Bush administration. Currently, hydraulic fracturing is being investigated by Congress and by the EPA, and we await the answers to those studies. What I'm saying is that there is a problem with water contamination related to hydraulic fracturing. And I mean, when I say hydraulic fracturing, I mean the gas drilling. We would not be doing gas drilling in the Marcellus Shale. We would not be doing gas drilling in the Barnett Shale if it wasn't for hydraulic fracturing. You cannot say we're isolating this problem to 8,000 feet down below ground at the wellbore. Of course, we have documented cases where you can show fractures that open up, that connect with natural fractures that do lead all the way to surface. That was the case in Divide Creek in Colorado. But what I'm saying is that the process of gas drilling, which we wouldn't be doing in the shale is inherently contaminating, and that is very clear. You know, to isolate and define hydraulic fracturing as simply the fractures at the bottom is very, very misleading.
Guys, I just want to cut in quickly because that's a key point that Josh tries to bring up, and a lot of opponents of shale development in general. You know, the thing is they want to identify hydraulic fracturing. They really want to target that because they recognize that without that tool, the shale is you just can't produce that natural gas. And so, you know, really you have a situation where hydraulic fracturing, which is a post-drilling technology. I mean, you drill the well, that takes a couple of weeks. The drilling, then when that's done, the derrick's gone, the drilling equipment is gone, the fracturing crew comes in. Now, they're going to fracture that well. It's going to take 3 days, 3, 4, 5 days, 10 days tops. They're done with that. The water gets brought back out. That well's ready to produce in another 40 years. So anytime you see any incident at the well site, again, we have 480,000 natural gas wells in the country. You know, if anytime you see a single incident at the well site, someone stubs their toe at the well site, all of a sudden it's fracturing's fault, and we need to pass the Frac Act. We need to pass this. We need to pass that. It's part of this whole thing where, again, you can't go after the carpenter here. You can't go into these towns where we're creating thousands of jobs and millions in revenue and you know, new books for the schools, new computers for this, new roads for that. You can't go into those towns and say, we need to stop natural gas production. You know, you'll get thrown out on your ear. What you can do, and what Josh is trying to do, is go in there and say, let's stop the hydraulic fracturing. Let's go after the carpenter's tools, not the carpenter.
Okay, let me let Josh respond to that, please, guys. Go ahead, Josh.
I'm not really sure what the point of that statement was. What we're talking about here is a new technology at incredibly high pressure, horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing with this chemical mixture. That is an enormous amount of chemicals going into the ground.
This is a process that has never been done. 60 years. And Josh says it's new. The mechanics of it are exactly the same as they've been for 60 years.
Never been done before.